you've got a lot of misunderstanding in your life and people don't really get you, you feel like people don't really get you, then that's probably what's happening, is that you're really not acting out who you truly think you are and want to be known for.
I think
Mhm.
when I see people who are not doing that, they are living their life for everybody and everything except themselves. And I don't mean giving unselfishly. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
unhappiness drives your self-esteem and changes who you are on a daily basis. And you're no longer doing this for yourself. You're doing this for someone else, your boss, your parents, your spouse, your friends, or whoever is
Yes.
influencing you in your life. You are not defining your brand, not living your brand, and you are not able to achieve what you are capable of because you're doing this in your life.
Good morning and welcome to Management Under Construction. I'm Brad Wyant.
And I'm Dee Davis. And we're here again today with my friend Suzanne Tulien. She is a branding expert. Suzanne joined us on a previous episode to talk about business branding. Today, we're going to talk about personal branding. They're quite different and very, very important for all of you professionals out there who are looking to accelerate your career. Welcome back, Suzanne. Thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit
Thanks
about
for
yourself.
I've been doing this kind of work for about 25, 30 years now in different areas of my life. I am an author and speaker, professional trainer, and love just digging into understanding what makes people tick and organizations, but helping them unpack who they are in terms of their attributes, getting more conscious, getting more strategic, operating in that certain mindset so that they can be known as something unique and special and different than everybody else.
We all want to be unique and we all want to be the same all at the same time. That's one of the things that makes us humans so interesting. We want to be the same and included, and we all want to be have our own unique personality and our own unique way of approaching things. Why is personal branding so important for any individual?
The first thing I would say is that you've got a brand whether you're conscious of it or not, right? Because of all a brand is for yourself is a set of perceptions that, first of all, you're perceiving about yourself, and then externally, how others are perceiving you. And when those two elements collide and come together, the more they overlap, the more consistent you are in reality and how you thinking you are showing up and how other thinking you are. But if they're separated, then you're thinking you're acting and behaving in one way, and they're perceiving completely different. So if you've got a lot of misunderstanding in your life and people don't really get you, you feel like people don't really get you, then that's probably what's happening, is that you're really not acting out who you truly think you are and want to be known for. So that's a particular dilemma that we have when we're trying to understand who we are as a brand. And that's what I help my solo professionals, emerging leaders. I just did a workshop for University of Colorado, Denver on Friday. And I had a group of staff council, about 45 people, really wanting to understand better how they can lead through the lens of understanding their personal brand better and getting more empowered in that way. It's a big thing to unpack. I think we're gonna have a fun conversation about this, and you've got a lot of great questions to kind of start digging more into.
Well, you bring up looking at your personal brand through the lens of leadership. I think that's really important for any leader to be very clear on who you are and what your leadership style is going to be and how you're going to show up for your people in any kind of a leadership position. So whether you're leading one person or you're leading 1,000 people, you're kind of almost on a stage. People are looking at you for cues of acting in a way that is consistent with the things that you say. And I think that's a lot of the branding that you're talking about. it's not just choosing your words, but it's also your behavior.
Well, when you choose your words, you have to live the word through your actions and behavior. If you say one of your style attributes, and this is a collection of personality traits, I have an exercise around that we come up with for you. Let's say one of your personality traits is nurturing. You've got to start looking at what are the actions and behaviors of a nurturer, and how do they listen? How do they react? How do they take action on things? How do they approach problems? How do they solve issues? How do they develop culture? Those types of things. When you have that construct and you're super clear on what that looks like, you begin really creating some tangible actions and behaviors that should be aligned with who you are and authentic if you're naming that attribute as something that is organically you, innately you.
Know thyself and all the world's a stage. Very good advice. I think for some of
Yes.
us, knowing ourselves, especially when we're so close to the product, so close to ourselves, it can help to talk to somebody who understands perception as well as you do. I'm sure you've had instances where somebody thought, well, this is the way people perceive me, and you've had the opportunity to dissuade them of those delusions, perhaps. Is that a tough conversation to have with folks?
It is a tough conversation because there's no real fine line between forcing someone to think a certain way about you because you can't control their mind, and going inward and saying that these are the 5 attributes I am, and I'm going to act and behave this way. I have control over how I'm delivering on what I believe I am and want to be known for. So I can't force someone to believe or to see the same things in the same way that I'm delivering in a strategic way. So I might think that I'm acting in a nurturing way, but they may have some baggage from years and years of certain situations and challenges in their life that they cannot get beyond to have a sense of buying to what you're trying to deliver. So that's a fine line. And know that you don't have total control over somebody's mind, but you have total control over your actions and behaviors and delivering on brand versus off brand as much as you possibly can. And no brand is universal. So we have to understand that we're never going to please everyone all the time. It's just something that we have to understand. And we have a tribe that we're going to convince and enlist, equip, and engage and become our follower. And then there's going to be those people that never will, ever. So you've got to really focus on your actions and behaviors that appeal to the tribe that will take that on and have some buy-in and work with you. Good
Right.
question.
This is classic segmentation, targeting, and positioning. If you don't separate the market for yourself as a business person into different groups of, well, I am for these people, I'm not for these people. Let me understand how I could better reach the people I am for through targeting, and then let me position myself in the right place for them. I love this metaphor somebody used. There's a company selling auto repair, and they say foreign and domestic on their little billboard, right? We've all seen one of those signs by the side of the road. And it's like, well, that doesn't give me any reason to believe that you're going to be right for my car. If you say you're for every car, then why would I believe that you'll be right for my car? When it comes down to the mechanics of it, if you're a good enough mechanic to work on any car, then you're a very skilled mechanic, but you can't convey that in a billboard because people don't understand enough about mechanics to understand that truth. Saying that you're for everybody actually hurts you in the long run.
Exactly right. That's what we're talking about for sure. You can't force anybody to believe something different than what they really truly want to believe in, and they're set on it. They're just not your market. They're just not your peeps. They're just not your tribe. And you got to let
Well,
that go.
absolutely. As podcasters, this comes up in my podcasting groups all the time. What happens when somebody says something bad about your podcast? They're not my people. I don't know what
Mm.
else to say. Not everybody's going to love what you're doing. And same thing happens as an author. I'm an author. Suzanne's an author. Not everybody's going to love your book. It's okay. You are
Yeah.
not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And for some people, that is very hard pill to swallow. No one likes to be criticized or talked badly about.
Well, it's a big dilemma for people not to be liked by everybody. And then they spend most of their time trying to be liked by everybody, and that it dilutes who they really are in their own brand efforts to be known as something unique and different.
And how does that relate to self-esteem, Suzanne?
You're trying to be everything to everybody. You can feel the dilemma there because it's impossible. And so it just creates a lot of stress, and you're going to get proven wrong a lot of the time because probably you're spending more effort trying to please people that are never pleased by your actions and behaviors. Just think about all that stress, and then, of course, the self esteem is going to go down. I'm working with teens now and doing a lot of personal brand work for teens because I think this needs to get down to that level, that age group, and help them develop and discern differently as they grow older and make decisions by knowing better who they are. I like to use the term self agency. The reason why I like that term is because it's foundational and it's really all about creating that decision in your mind that you are the author of your own life, knowing yourself so well that you get to write the book of the rest of your life, that you are not a product of your environment. You're author of the experiences you want to create. And so when you get that sense of clarity and understanding about who you are by knowing and literally identifying and defining those attributes that resonate with you, D, you know exactly what this is because you the process. When you get those goosebumps and you say, yes, that is me. I've identified and defined it. I've named is me. It feels good. It resonates a lot. The cognitive resonance there. I want to become more of that. And what happens when you make that decision, you become less vulnerable to your external environment situations. You become less reactive and all over the board out there trying to mitigate what's going on outside of yourself. And you become more internally driven. So you're tapping into what makes you you more often and make more authentic decisions that align with who you want to become known for. This is deep, right? I just did this workshop Friday, and I had people in there just their jaws were dropping because they were realizing they have been out of control, solving problems, putting out fires, doing this, doing that outside of themselves, and then not tapping in wisdom and expertise of what they know to be true. It's really powerful.
I bring up the self-esteem because I think a lot of people who spend their time and their energy and their life, they're writing their book for other people. I love the way you said
Mhm.
that you're the author of your own book. Absolutely, you are. And trying to convince people that your book doesn't have anything to do with anyone else, really. It has to do with you. It's all about you. And
Yes.
that's everybody's favorite subject is themselves, right? So let's write a book about yourself. What does that beginning, middle, and end look like? And
Mhm.
when I see people who are not doing that, they are living their life for everybody and everything except themselves. And I don't mean giving unselfishly. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, and we mentioned in the last episode, cognitive dissonance. This is uncomfortable for me. I don't like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's unhappiness there. And
Oh, yeah.
that unhappiness drives your self-esteem and changes who you are on a daily basis. And you're no longer doing this for yourself. You're doing this for someone else, your boss, your parents, your spouse, your friends, or whoever is
Yes.
influencing you in your life. You are not defining your brand. You are not living your brand, and you are not able to achieve what you are capable of because you're doing this in your life.
Room for authenticity when you're trying to be everything else.
Yeah. And you're going to be unhappy. To summarize, by defining your personal brand, you can figure out yourself a little bit. There's some deep, hard questions in there, folks. I've been through this process with Suzanne. There's some stuff that I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. I don't want to do it. I have to think about it for a long time. And you can change your mind too. As you're choosing the words and the attributes
Mhm.
that define you, I know I changed my mind more than once on a couple of things because I'm like, you know what? I really thought about it. And I don't
Yes.
think that's the right
Mhm.
word.
You're peeling away the onion through the activity, through the exercise. You're playing around and drafting this concept of who you are. So things will adjust and change through this process. And then we're going to land on something to be solid. We're going to end up landing on something, which you did very well.
I think it's Brene Brown that has that saying, and this is in addition to some of the stuff that you've given me that really resonates with me. She has a saying that's something like, "That's out of my integrity," and it's the same kind
Yes.
of thing. If you're branding, it's off brand. It's not what I want to be known for, which is the sticky
Mhm.
phrase that you use that I really like and go back to all the time. This is a path to a better you. Is the overall
More,
message.
a more authentic you, a more stress free you, a more confident you, a more you full of self agency, a higher esteemed you, better decision making you, all these things.
And the fact of the matter is that that authenticity, which is a very commonly used word, maybe ill-used these days, works. When people sense that somebody is not being truthful, when they sense that someone is putting on airs, it doesn't take any intellectual training, it doesn't take a fancy education. Anybody with some horse sense about people can tell when somebody is not being themselves, and they will act accordingly. There's a trust that you have to form with people to get anything done, business, interpersonal. If you can be your authentic self, communicate that authentic self, and communicate the value in that authenticity and the fact of what you're trying to convey, then you're going to have more success than somebody who has all the same attributes you do, but is not able to communicate them in an authentic way and
Mhm.
is not able to explain. The people who end up trying to be everything to everybody end up being known to no one. Everyone realizes, oh, they're just trying to play this game of not saying anything too controversial, walking this middle path that doesn't get them anywhere. It's why politics swing to the edges. It's why people hear the most radical, interesting voice in the room. And the people that gravitate to that, the early adoption versus the people who come in late, it becomes a powerful movement as opposed to this peripheral thing that lives and dies in some annal of history. It's the people who say something radical, who have something meaningful to say about it that end up being remembered.
You know, Brian, authenticity is overused and thrown around way too much without thought, without enough consciousness and understanding about what that actually means. When people claim that they are authentic, they have not done the deep dive work to really identify and define who they are. What are you being authentic to? If you don't know, then you cannot possibly consistently be authentic. So, authentic to what is the question? To your personal brand's DNA, whatever it is that you've done, the work you've done to identify those core values that you espouse and live by, those guiding principles, that set of style attributes, personality traits that you know to be true about who you are, understanding who you are and what makes you different from your experiences to your personality traits to how you behave and react to things. All of these things are part of the whole wholeness that we call us.
Let's do another sort of deeper question like we did on the last episode about this issue. One of the things that I struggled with when I first started in the construction industry was that a lot of the people that I surrounded myself with were get it done, hardcore, really deeply passionate people who were very productive. And I was much more of a thinker, much more of a, well, let's sit back and armchair that out. Let's talk about that. What could that be? I was much more in my head, much more theoretical. And a lot of people that I met very on in the industry didn't resonate with my way of thinking about things. And so I had to change that way of thinking a little bit to adapt to my environment. But I also had to stay true to my, very detail oriented, very, well, I'm going to go do 6 hours worth of research on this thing because I'm really interested in it. And I'm going to come back and that's going to be productive and carry it forward. when you realize as a professional that you don't quote unquote vibe, to use my generation's word, that you don't vibe with the industry naturally, how much do you need to adapt to the environment that you've found yourself in to be able to work within it, to learn from your peers and reshape your own practices, your own beliefs accordingly? And how much do you need to stay true to the core values about yourself that are never going to change? Where do you find that balance in a genuine, honest way?
Another great question there, Brad. I would say that there's a lot of decisions that have to be made by you and your comfortableness in an environment that is not naturally fit for how you think and react and act, right? So you've got to think about, if this position that I'm in is requiring this quick thinking way of being on a regular basis, that's got to be stressful for you. When you are a thinker, you are a processor, you are a theorist, you understand that to begin with. But then I would also say that if I were you and I were wanting to be seen as a leader in environment, I would advocate for your own differentiation in how you come about solving problems. Advocate about the quality that of the decisions you can make by doing it the way you do it. What is the value proposition in having all this group of people over here doing these quick answers, and 30 minutes later you come back with some deeper insights and thought around that? But I would advocate for yourself around the qualities that show up when that happens, so that you can create almost a new environment and a new culture and a new understanding, and your teams embrace that quality that you can bring to the table, that deeper thinking, the more realistic solutions, or you pull out things that they haven't thought about because they were very quick thinking. And some people are really good thinking on their feet, but some people like to process. I think an organization needs both. I think a position needs both. So as a leader yourself, for the qualities behind the time you take and the results that you produce because of what you're doing uniquely.
Well put. Thank you. I think that's a great answer. Even if you are not the typical version of whatever industry you're in, differentiate and ascribe value to what you bring to the table, demonstrate that value, and that'll carry you well. Very well put.
Now, if you're not typically in the stereotype of that position, I show some examples in my workshop about this cop, and I'll ask the audience, what's the personality of a traffic cop? They throw out attributes. And then I show this video of this cop up in New England, and he is dancing and blowing his whistle and doing the oop-de-doo and pulling people around, getting back on his feet, doing like line dancing and all kinds of great fun stuff that people travel to go see. So then I said, now what do you think the personality of a cop is, right? So when you're thinking in that stereotypical positioning, like a lawyer or a banker or even a scientist, I'm like, do you guys all know Bill Nye the Science Guy? He brought about science in a totally different, fun, crazy way that really brought a new way of thinking about scientists. You can infuse your own personalities into your positions and create great differentiation and a respect and appreciation. There's lots of ways to do that. I wanted to bring about a concept that I showcase in my workshops. This is a quote from Tom Watson, who is a former CEO of IBM. He says, "Nothing more conclusively proves your ability to lead others than what you do on a daily basis to lead yourself." Think about that. So we always start out the workshop as being understanding that leadership is internal. It's an internal based process. Otherwise, if you're not tapping into who you are as a leader, you're really becoming more of an authority, right? You're using all these external systems and processes to gain authority over a group or or a situation.
Yeah, the difference between leadership and management. I always look at it like this. You can give somebody the title of manager, project manager, department manager, division manager. Leadership is awarded by others. You do not have
It's
to have a title to lead. You can be the lowest person on the proverbial totem pole and still
right.
lead. There's a huge difference between leadership and management. And I think that really helps explain why some people are very capable leaders and some people are put in leadership positions and do a terrible job because they're not leading from within. They're leading from without.
Like, If
Or common.
if the currency of having authority, like management, the currency of that was rules, following the rules, then what would the currency be of leadership?
Integrity,
People wanting to
trust.
follow you, people deciding that you're somebody worth following.
Currency is trust, right? And integrity.
Mhm.
So you've got this authority side, rules, and then the trust side. Very interesting. The differences. We actually have an activity, and we're at the table in the workshop and decide what are the attributes of having an authority position versus a leadership role, and that's what comes out. Right? It's really powerful.
And we talked in the last episode of the difference between branding and marketing.
Mhm.
Marketing is something that you push outward to market your brand, right?
Right.
Branding is something that you do internally. And I know that when I was naming my businesses, for example, I was very, very careful. I have a very negative view of businesses that use words in their title, in their name, or their statement. Trust, integrity, honesty. If you're out there announcing from the rooftops, we're honest company, honest consultancy. You can try to live that. You can try to demonstrate that through living your brand, but other people have to say that about you.
Yes, and that's the dilemma. That's the work. Right? There's got to be some coherence between the external perception and that internal perception and the actual do. A lot of people have an issue with their job and being known as this brand in their job. And I have to keep continuously telling them that it's not what you're doing for a living, it's who you are being in your life. That's what your personal brand is about. So I could pluck you out of being any position that you're in, but you're still who you are. And I'm going to put you in another position and you're still that brand. It's not a title. It's not what you do for a living. It's who you are being. Does that make sense?
It does. I've talked to a number of people who I think try to separate their personal and their business persona, if you will, by saying, I'm this person at work, but I'm a totally different person at home. I don't know how you can be two people. I think you have to be one person, and maybe you're not really being your true self in one of those places.
Exactly. That's right. Because you can't. If they are truly two separate people, you're inauthentic in one area. I think is actually happening that they don't realize is that they've got a set of core values and a set of personality traits, but they're showing up in certain circumstances a little bit more so or less so in the environments that they're in. Let's say they are a leader, but they don't feel like they're a leader at home, but they're definitely having to be a leader at work. These leadership qualities that they know they are showing up at work much more so than they are at home for some reason they're not feeling comfortable showing up as a leader at home. That's just an example.
I'm sure we've all worked with people that are tough to work with. And I know one of the things that I eventually think in my head is, what is this person like at home?
Yeah.
Do they act like this at home? Do they treat their family like this? My goodness.
Yes. There's another piece that I like to share with personal friends that I'm working with. So if I believe I am unworthy because it's in my mind, it's in my heart, it's in what I'm thinking about myself. And we can feel that energy from people that don't have that little level of confidence or level of worthiness. But in going through a process like where I'm identifying and defining these attributes that resonate with who I am, and then now I can step in more and more into that, I make better decisions and I can create my environments and I'm the author of my life, back to the driver's seat of who I am. If I get more confident in that process and I'm believing that I'm perceiving myself in my own thoughts as worthy, and a leader and smart and I've got some expertise and I'm believing that, then I'm going to start being perceived that way because I'm going to act that out. Right. So literally the clarity of process shifts your actions and behaviors because you're landing on an understanding and an idea that resonates with you so much. You're buying into it. Right. This isn't about creating something that you're not because that's never sustainable in any situation. It's like me being this way at home and this way at work. That's stressful. The cortisol levels are up and your body is trying to compensate for everything and your mind's compensating. But it's the clarity piece that using a coach like what I was doing with you, it's helping you get down to that nut and challenging you about the attributes that you chose that you can actually live this. Ooh, is this natural? Is it organic? Is it comfortable for D to live this way? Absolutely. When it is, let's go to town on. Let's start talking about it now. Let's, put it on your resume. Let's put it in your vernacular. Let's, infuse that into your actions and behaviors so people are starting to feel that about you. And then you become known for that. Bottom line.
You kind of alluded to one of the sayings that I see out there a lot, but I don't think people take it to heart enough is whatever you tell yourself is true.
That's
If you tell
right.
yourself you're going to fail, you will fail. If you tell yourself you're going to succeed, you will succeed. Professional sports coaches talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and professional
Mhm.
athletes talk about this stuff all the time. You visualize yourself making the basket, making the field goal, succeeding, whatever that means in your particular position. What does that look like? You visualize success and you constantly talk to yourself. Your self talk
Yes.
matters tremendously, not just in the level of success that you're going to see in the long run, but in your own mental health and your stress levels. What you tell yourself matters. That internal voice that we all have, and I don't care how much you know this or how successful you are, you're still going to have an internal voice that occasionally pops up and goes, "You suck."
Mhm.
Happens to me all the time. Happens to me all the time. I'm a very confident person. I
Yeah.
still have a little voice that goes, "You're not going to get that. You suck. This isn't going to work." And I go, "No, shut up. We're not going to think about it like that. I'm going to succeed. This is going to work." You have to manage those inner voices.
You have this process and you know this because you have this now written down, documented on paper. When you get in a rut and you forget greatness that you are, you go back into your handbook, your official personal brand handbook, you read through your attributes and your definition and remember who you want to become known for. And it resonates with you. And then you change your vibration. Obviously, you get back to thinking the right way, the way that's more congruent and aligned with who you are. And obviously your self-esteem goes up and everything shifts.
We all have our ups and downs. I'm mostly up here, but once in a while I drop off and I get a little demotivated. And I have different things that I do to help get that internal motivation that we were talking about
Mhm.
happening again, because that is the only thing that is going to continue to drive you. It's not somebody cracking a whip on you. I don't have anybody to
Mhm.
crack a whip on me. I don't have a boss. I am my boss. There is nobody to crack a whip on me. I have to be eternally motivated to succeed at whatever I do, whether it's writing the next book or making a great podcast or doing a great job on this project for a client or whatever it is. We all have our ups and downs. I do want to ask you to list for our listeners, what are the critical attributes that go into creating a good personal brand?
Okay. It's very similar to the business brand, but it's directed in a more personal way. There are a few extra buckets that we pay attention to in the personal brand versus the business brand. I'll start off saying that core values are probably the top. These guiding principles that help you lean into making decisions that are in alignment with who you want to be known for and who you are as a person. So we do an exercise around core values, identifying and defining them, how you would define them as yourself. And then there's a set of core, what we call style and style attributes. And these are the personality traits that you will be identifying that really stand out and are your default personality traits. So when we get those identified, then we go into defining those as well. And the definitions themselves are much more the meaty part of this exercise and this process, because it forces you to put your shoes on in your family environment. How do you show up that way? In your work environment, how do you show up that way? In your community, with your friends? How do you guide your own wellness and well being? What decisions do you make in that space? So that makes it real and tangible for you, and realize that, hey, this is actually who I am. And I can actually make these decisions that are more in alignment with how I want to show up every day. Then we really unpack and have a lot of fun with your differentiators. The awards you may have gotten, the unique skill sets that you have, if you speak several languages, if you've traveled many countries, philosophy, all of these differentiators that make you you as a bundle of who you are. Then we get into something called the standard living, which is 5 buckets. And that's what I was talking about: your family, your work environment, community, relationships, friend relationships, your wellness and well being could include your faith, and also your financial situation, how you manage finances and live your life. So we get into those and we start applying those attributes into standards of living so that you can begin to create goals and standards for yourself to be more conscious, strategic, and deliberate in living those. And then another fun piece is your brand mantra. And I was going to ask you, Dee, if you remember your brand mantra and say it on a regular basis. And brand why statement we craft so that when you do get into those ruts, sometimes you get off the bandwagon, so to speak, and you get consumed by the external environment situation, and you forget to go internal and realize who you really are. These are those tools. The brand mantra and brand why statement are the tools that help you get out of that. I've got a lot more information on my website as well. Do you have your mantra? What is your mantra, Dee?
I have to confess, I have not even looked at it in a while. So, but this is life though, guys. We are imperfect. So, do I know the basics of it? Absolutely. I try to think about that and live that every day.
Well, this will maybe trigger you to go back and just kind of get that fresh in your again, because it does. It's a great reset. When you're overwhelmed with life and you're off brand a little bit here and there, it's a great reset to have that work to go back to. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Dee, this is your podcast homework for the week. Since I'm writing the next episode, you gotta go do your thing here.
Yep, Dee goes back to her room and does her homework. But it was a really great experience going through this personal branding exercise with Suzanne, and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's work. When you got into how do you show up in all these different pieces of your life, I found that difficult because I guess I never sat back and thought about it before. I feel like I've most of my life done a pretty good job of showing up as my genuine self in all my roles in life. But it did make me really sit back and think deeply about some of those roles. I want to do more in some of these roles, but I'm not doing it. Why is that?
I'll be honest, I can hear some of the veterans of the construction industry listening to this kind of thing being discussed as work and saying, well, work is when you're putting 2x4s up and when you're building scaffold, when you're getting pipe down. It's like, all right, yes, that is work. But if you can't acknowledge that these difficult self-actualization conversations, that these reviews of your own behavior and how you show up are work, then maybe you're afraid to do this kind of work is the challenge I would give the people who are in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I was. When I went to business school, it was like, all right, come on, what are we doing here? We're all talking about our feelings. When I was in construction, this and it is work, and it's intimidating because it's facing yourself with yourself and doing this kind of introspection that many of us have never done because we hoped we wouldn't have to, because the work that came most naturally to us was a craft or making things right in the spreadsheet or making a great slide deck. and talking about somebody else's problems. Speaking as a consultant, that's much easier. That comes a lot easier to us than talking about ourselves. But if you can learn to do this kind of work, you will be better for it. It's going to make you better at whatever it is that you actually want to be doing. It's going to improve your performance in that core competency.
That's a great point that you bring about, that, people aren't used to going inward, right? They're not used to touching base with who they are. If you've ever thought of the phrase that's out there that says, "Is this my life now? Is this all there is? I feel like a robot," right? If you've ever thought or felt that way, then you want more meaning in your life, this is the process. This is something like this, right? Go start going inward. Start having your external circumstances be less and less important and more of your internal work, the driver of your happiness, the driver of your well-being, to be in the driver's seat of your life. Like we talk about being your self-author. If you're wanting more meaning in life, then go inward. It's not about, I'm going to go hike Mount Everest. It's really about what is that drive inside of you that wants you to get to that spot? Are you clear on that? And then acting it out.
Yeah, self-work is always the hardest work, for sure. It's so much easier to go erect a building, put together a wall, put up some drywall. That stuff, that's outside of you. That's a learned skill that you can easily go execute once you're good at it without a whole lot of thought or energy. It's just work. This kind of work, it can get a little deep sometimes and it can be a little uncomfortable, but it's well worth the journey, I would say. If somebody wanted to create their own personal brand to help themselves in their personal life, in their business life, increase their reputation, their confidence, how long does it take to build a brand and really see some results out of that?
Well, as you know, the clarity piece is primary. It's the first thing that we need to do is clear on who we are before we go out and market it and build an audience around knowing that, right? We have to not only identify and define it, we ourselves have to start operating in that concept that we've created in the assigning of meaning process. Right? That's what a brand or branding is about assigning meaning. When we say develop a personal brand, I would rather say uncover the true attributes that make me who I am. We as human beings, when we find something, discover something, the first thing we do, scientists, astronomers, we name it. We have to name it. And that name gives us meaning. And then we define what that is. So we go through that process of unpeeling the onion and really landing on those attributes that make us who we are and then define that. That's the first process. And then we start infusing it into our daily actions and behaviors and what we do. And this process could take, if you're a do it yourself and you get the book, Personal Brand Clarity, which is like a textbook, all the activities are in here. It walks you through step by step. You can do it as fast as you want, as fast as you can read, as fast as you can plug in the information and build content, get the results out of the exercises. When you're working with me, I recommend we go through each module or each chapter, probably one every 2 weeks, so that you have time to process, flush it out, hone in and make those changes that you need to make and clarify. And working with me could be a 5-week process. It could be a 6-month process if you want help actually diving in and making it tangible in your world and doing the social media marketing and doing all of that stuff that would help the external perception match now who you believe you are and how you're showing up. So it's a it depends answer D to that question, but it's how bad do you want it? How quickly do you want it? And how willing are you to take that deep dive and do the work?
Yeah, and having done it myself, I would say that some people are dive in head first and get this done as quickly as possible kind of people. Some of this takes some reflection. There were times when I set the work aside. I got to a spot that was hard and I thought, gosh, I don't know how to answer this question. I need to think about it. And I'd set it aside for a few days or even a week. And then
Yeah.
I'd come back to it because sometimes you really just need to process that, and you're not necessarily doing the work if you're speeding through it as fast as humanly possible to get it done. It's not a
Right.
checkbox kind of activity. It's a deep thinking, gosh, I never considered that before, in at least in a few spots. And it's going to be different for everybody, I'm sure. But I wouldn't say that it's as fast as you can read the book and check the boxes. I would definitely say that you want to take your time, because your results are going to be better. And I did. I got, I would say, 90% of the way through. And I said, you know what? I'm not happy with one piece of this. It doesn't feel right. I don't
Mhm.
like that word. I don't think that's really the right answer. And it took me a while to figure out what the right answer was. And then I remember emailing you back and going, nope, I'm changing this word. I'm changing this word to this different word, and this is what it means to me. And it's
And
okay.
the only reason you could do that is because you had something to look at and decide if this is on brand or off brand. So you did the work, and then you realized that that wasn't quite gelling with you because you had contrast, right? That's the only way you could have made that decision and dive deeper and peel away that next onion. And when you decided to work with me, so you had a coach that challenged you on some of your answers, right? So we had great conversations about, is this true to you? What do you mean by this? And if you're saying this, how does that actually show up in what you're doing out there? And so that was helpful for you. You can race through the book, but if you decide to work with somebody who's going to challenge you, you'll get deeper and broader and more honed in on your answers, and probably more aligned with who you're trying to become known.
I think the result was better for me, at least in working with you directly. Question for you. Do you think that this stuff could change over time for somebody?
If we've done the right work in the right way and we got deep enough and foundationally enough, then I would say that your core values and your attitudes generally shouldn't change. The way you deliver on those might change because you're in different situations and different circumstances, but that basic fundamental selection of attributes that you believe you are shouldn't change, but your differentiators might change. The way you live your life through the standard of living might change because you're evolving. You're moving into different levels of being at those attributes. That's what's going to subtly change as you continue to evolve. I wouldn't say you would eventually wipe out everything and then start over. That means that we didn't get to the core in the first place. And unless you had an accident, you lost your mind, and you don't remember anything about your world and your life, and you become a different person when you get your memory back or something like that, that would be a rebranding effort.
Yes, it would. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. So, Brad, are you ready to go do some personal branding work?
You bet. That's the idea. That after I finish unpacking.
So,
Right.
in the show notes, we're going to have for you a couple of links to a personal brand Kickstarter toolkit. It's a link to where you can sign up for her personal brand Kickstarter toolkit for free. And then there's also in the business cast, if you listen to that episode, we'll have one for an employer branding assessment. And we'll have lots of contact information. Suzanne, do you have any closing comments for our listeners?
If this is sparking something in you, go play around with this toolkit. This will give you some idea as to a deeper dive into understanding who you are and who you want to be known for. And that is work, but it is work that has such a high ROI, return on your investment, whether that investment is money, if you're paying just $20 for the book or a little bit more for the program with my help. That investment is so powerful as you're evolving and continuing to want to have more meaning in your life and be who you want to be known for. Check it out.
Well, it was a great experience for me. I hope some of you listening will give it a try and contact Suzanne, go to her website, check out what she's got to offer, or if you get the chance to see her speak. She's actually a very wonderful and dynamic speaker.
Thank you, dear.
It's been so great to meet you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your work with us.
You guys so much. Really appreciate the time and the great questions.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
For any of you who may be wondering, Dee did do her homework. So here is my brand style, my values, and my statement. My brand style is efficient, functional, protective, and conservation minded. I value honesty, responsibility, tenacity, and knowledge. My personal brand mantra is conservation, honest, responsible, and tenacious, or CHART, little a for short. My personal brand why is I exist to enlighten and inform others honestly and responsibly, accelerating skills, knowledge, and helping to set and exceed big, hairy, audacious goals. I pledge to keep conservation at the forefront of all things I do in all aspects of my life. This process of going through personal branding was for me very, very helpful, very enlightening, and very hard. I'm not going to lie. When I look back at my brand mantra, it took me forever to narrow it down to these 4 words: conservation, honest, responsible, and tenacious. My personal brand why, I think, speaks more to who I am in business than who I am in personal. And I had a really difficult time separating those two. I highly encourage you to contact Suzanne and work with her on your personal branding, your business branding, and everything in between. Thanks for joining us.
Watch us on YouTube at YellowstoneProfessionalEd.co. Don't forget to like, share, and follow us, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can email us with questions, comments, and suggestions at heydee@managementunderconstruction.com. That's HEYDEE to get me or Brad at managementunderconstruction.com.